Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, an MSNBC commentator grew increasingly unhinged this weekend in his opinions about President Trump. He encouraged people to topple President Trump, to take to the streets. He called President Trump a dictator. Now, notwithstanding the fact that he's calling for a coup against a duly elected president, here's my question. Do Democrats realize how ridiculous they are when they call to overthrow a president who hasn't committed a crime? Name me a crime and I'll stand with you outside the White House and protest, but Democrats can't name a crime. Yet even without a crime, this is what they want to happen. Watch.
Here's what's going on here. I don't want to talk about a memo. We've got a dozen instances of clearly the Russians colluding in this election with top Trump officials. 2 have convicted. We have a guy, a president, who clearly is owned by Putin. We have an investigation going. Okay, that's good news. We basically now have a press release that's been put out, that's been twisted and mangled, that now will give this president permission to fire Rosenstein, who will now take over this investigation. Our democracy is under siege. People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator. This is not something to analyze anymore.
Yeah.
This is not so, oh, a good day for Trump.
Yeah.
This is frightening stuff if you are an American. If you're somebody who's 80 years old and sitting at home and you've watched the greatness of this country, you should be terrified. And if you're a 12-year-old and the future is in front of you, this is terrifying. This is not time to analyze and pundit. People, we need a revolution at this point. This investigation is trying to find out one simple thing. Did our #1 geopolitical enemy have anything to do with our electoral process? I think that's an investigation that should happen. Right now, the president, based on nothing, based on something he could have written himself, is going to go out and go, I don't think we should have that investigation. Hey, guess what? A year from now, if this doesn't change, maybe this table's in trouble. We keep talking like this. I'm not being dramatic. No, this is what's happening, kids. I mean, and this guy's winning. This wacky, orange, poofy-haired guy is winning this game, and we cannot depend on the Congress anymore. And if Rosenstein is fired, there needs to be people in the streets.
With me now, Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Joel, good to see you.
Hi, Liz.
All right, Joel, there's a lot to unpack here, and I think we can both agree that he had a lot of coffee that morning before he went on the air. But I do want to start with some of his factual inaccuracies here, because I think it does a disservice to the American people. I think you'll agree. When you're talking, when you're giving commentary about these very serious allegations against our government, and you use alternative facts, for lack of a better word here, that are not true. And I want to start with this. He says, I don't want to talk about the memo, even though I assume that's what he was called on to talk about. He says, we've got a dozen instances of clearly the Russians colluding in this election with top Trump officials. 2 have already been convicted. And Joel, that's just not true. There's been nobody convicted of collusion with Russia.
Well, I mean, there might be forgive the term, a difference without a distinction there. I mean, I think he was talking about General Flynn and also George Papadopoulos and also the other gentleman whose name escapes me right now. I think that's who he's referring to. No, there hasn't been convictions, but I do believe there's been plea deals already. So I think the Mueller investigation's already shown that there is a good bit of bad deeds that's been done by President Trump and his team. And
I agree with you. There's been shady behavior from people who were associated with it, but it doesn't have to do with colluding with Russia. It has to do with lying to the FBI, or in Paul Manafort's case, just being an extremely sketchy individual and taking money from other people. But it doesn't have to do with colluding with Putin to rig this election.
Liz, you are underselling lying to the FBI. You are also underselling a president who has tried to unduly influence at least 2 FBI directors and 1 deputy FBI director who he went and mocked because his wife had the audacity to run as a Democrat on the same year that Hillary Clinton was running.
No, forgive me if I don't take a lying to the FBI charge as seriously when it was a lie to Peter Strzok, who fundamentally inserted bias into both the Hillary Clinton investigation and the Mueller investigation. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. It's wrong, and General Flynn should be held accountable for it. But no, I do not take Peter Strzok as an individual very seriously.
Liz, come on. Come on, Liz. Peter Strzok is destroying the Republic. You've got the president who is literally running an opposition campaign against the FBI from the Oval Office. And you're telling me about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page carrying on with an affair which was juvenile?
No, I'm talking about Peter Strzok. I'm talking about Peter Strzok inserting his bias against the president into the FBI when it should be without politics. Without politics at all.
Find me one. Who wouldn't be biased against this president who hasn't proven to have any real skill that the American people can discern other than talking a big game.
Wait a second.
We just saw his
Wait a second.
stock market
Now
went down 1,500
this just got more serious.
points
Do
today.
you think it's appropriate
Yeah.
for an official, a top law enforcement official who's investigating a crime, do you think it's appropriate for them to use their own political views as reasons to either charge someone or not charge someone?
Let me tell you a story. There was a guy one
No,
time.
I
Alex
just want an answer to the
Azar,
question.
who's our-
I just want to answer the
I'm gonna
question.
I'm going to answer your question. There's a guy named Alex Azar. He's our HHS secretary. Do you know what he did about 20 years ago? He served on Ken Starr's team as one of his top deputies during the Whitewater investigation. Now, does that invalidate the fact that he is obviously a lifelong Republican, clerk for Judge Scalia? Does that invalidate any of his findings in that investigation? No. Andrew McCabe's wife is a Democrat. These people,
Joel,
yes,
Robert
they probably,
Mueller himself
some of
removed
them,
Peter
you
Strzok
find,
because
we
he said it
find
wasn't
themselves
just an
in the,
opinion.
in the
He
odd
said that he
position of
wasn't
having
capable of being
Democrats that work in the
objective.
FBI.
There's a no, don't conflate
We
the
have
two
our-
things. That's ridiculous. There's a clear difference between an individual having a political view, which I think any well-informed adult should have, and not being able to
Especially
separate
against
that
this
from your
president,
professional
by the way.
business. That's what Peter Strzok did. Even Robert
especially
Mueller
against this
himself
president.
kicked him off the team for being too objective. Does it not bother you that our FBI, our intelligence agencies snoop on a private citizen because they don't like the politics of his boss? Does that not bother you?
It bothers me that our president is running an opposition campaign against our FBI. By the way, the Law and Order Party.
No, he's
Liz,
running
by
an
the-
opposition
isn't this the party
campaign,
that
and I will
believes
give
in-
you that
wait a
against
minute, wait a minute.
abuses
Isn't
by
this
the FBI.
Isn't this the
It
Blue
shocks me
Lives-
sitting here that you
isn't this the
don't
Blue Lives
condemn
Matter
abuses
Party?
by the FBI.
Liz, isn't this the Blue Lives Matter Party? Aren't you guys the ones that get upset anytime someone doesn't close ranks behind law enforcement? And we have the president running an opposition campaign against the top law enforcement officers in this country? Please show some consistency.
I
That's
will
all
show
we want,
consistency.
is
I show consistency for defending law and order and justice. I defend police officers who are unfairly accused of targeting black men
Yeah,
when they
just not
studies
ones
show
who
no
are
such thing. Don't
Democrats.
interrupt me.
Just not
and I
ones who are
defend
Democrats.
law and justice in the FBI when they do not abuse their power. Just like I call out police officers who abuse their power in targeting citizens if they do that, and I will call out our nation's top law enforcement agency when they abuse their power. It shocks me, Joel, sitting here that you can't put your partisan politics aside for 1 second and say, listen, it doesn't matter what party I'm in. This was an abuse of surveillance by the FBI, and that should stop.
Well, two things. One, I was rude. I apologize. I shouldn't have interrupted you. I was being very rude there. But secondly, Liz, I'm telling you, I don't understand how you guys can make sense of this type of back and forth with this party. You've got a party that sits and closes ranks against with police officers anytime someone of color is attacked by a police officer. But you have the president running an opposition campaign against the top law enforcement officers who happen to have Democrats in their family or who have had the audacity to believe
Joel,
that this
we can rewind
president
the show and replay my answer because you said the same thing right now that you said 2 minutes ago. We're defending law and justice and equal treatment. It doesn't matter what your personal politics is. It matters if you use that as political bias to target individuals. They're basically yelling at me in my ear because we're already over the time. We will have to pick this up next week.
Sorry,
Joel,
Liz.
thanks for being here.
Take care.